A new diabolical court case has made it mandatory for all undocumented immigrants to be detained without bond.
In today's video, we will discuss about American politics. Guys, as we speak, American politics is not just being discussed or debated anymore. It's being put on the trial in the court of public opinion. And we will talk about 3 stories in our video today, because these 3 stories, they keep colliding on our screens, in our televisions, tablets, desktops, phones. And all these 3 stories, they paint a picture, a troubling picture, not just a picture, a troubling picture of accountability and the rule of law in the United States of America.
This is outrageous. It may be the most corrupt thing we have seen from any president in American history, just based upon the sheer amount of money involved. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that 4 days before the inauguration, lieutenants to an Abu Dhabi royal signed a secret deal with the Trump family to purchase a 49% stake in Trump's crypto company for $500 million. This was effectively a direct cash transfer from a foreign government to the President of the United States and his family. Why? They wanted access, in this case, to highly advanced, tightly guarded U.S. chips used for artificial intelligence. In order to get them, they'd need approval from the United States government. They'd been trying for years, but had been unsuccessful. Sure enough, though, after this massive investment in Donald Trump's crypto company, the approval was granted. 500,000 U.S.-made AI chips were to be shipped to the UAE. Under Donald Trump, American foreign policy is for sale. The proceeds go directly to the president and his corrupt inner circle, and the American people get nothing. Buying access is now the norm in the Trump administration. What we are seeing right now is truly the greatest corruption coming out of any White House ever. What has Congress done? Nothing. And this is what is important right now. If we cannot push Congress to act, then we need to get a Congress that will. We need to stand up and fight for change.
The Epstein files could possibly bring down a British Prime Minister. Why do you think that is happening there, but it's hardly politically hurting an American president?
Well, I think it's important to note that right now the Congress is controlled by Donald Trump's allies. And our Speaker of this House preferred to keep the House of Representatives shut for more than 40 days so that we could not advance the Epstein Files Transparency Act. He is being actively shielded by members of his own party, whereas in other countries, including the UK, members of parliament are demanding accountability. And that is why our plea is to the American people. We need to hold these people accountable. And my message to Donald Trump is, we're coming for you.
Most black voters, by the way, have no idea about the racist history of the Democratic Party. I didn't know when I was in high school that the Democrats founded the Klan. I didn't know when I was in high school that Democrats voted against the 13th Amendment that freed the slaves, the 14th Amendment that gave slaves citizenship, the 15th Amendment that, at least on paper, gave slaves the right to vote. Democrats voted against all of that stuff. I didn't know when I was in high school that more Republicans as a percentage of the party voted for the Civil Rights Act of 1964 than did Democrats. I didn't know that. I didn't know that Everett Dirksen, a Republican in Illinois, got an award from the NAACP for how he helped to shepherd the Civil Rights Bill through Congress. I didn't know that Al Gore's father participated in what was then the longest filibuster to prevent the bill from ever becoming on the floor. I also bought into that notion that, okay, Democrats used to be racist, but then Republicans switched places with them in the 60s. I bought into that until I found out that of all the Democrats that voted against the Civil Rights Act in the House, of all the Democrats who voted against the Civil Rights Act in the Senate, only 2 switched to the Republican Party, one of whom was Strom Thurmond. George Wallace, who stood in front of the school door as a Democratic governor saying segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever, he died a Democrat. Robert Byrd, who was a Kleagle, that means a recruiter for the Klan, he died a Democrat at 100 years old in the Senate. Most of these guys never switch parties. It is a lie. The reason the South became more and more Republican is because the Democratic Party became more and more left-wing, became anti-Vietnam, anti-war, pro-abortion, and the South became increasingly uncomfortable with their allegiance to the Democratic Party, especially since Jim Crow had fallen. If Jim Crow has fallen, why are we in bed with these Democrats? What's the point? And so the South became more and more Republican for a reason that had nothing to do with racism. But that was the line that was fed by so many people, and so many blacks to this day believe that.
A new diabolical court case has made it mandatory for all undocumented immigrants to be detained without bond, and in some cases, indefinitely. Before, they were just going after violent criminals, but now they are subjecting every single undocumented immigrant to detention without any way out. Previously, people were able to bail them out and just ensure that they showed up to all of their mandatory court cases. Now that option is completely gone. Texas particularly has been holding people indefinitely, and that is why so many immigrants are being transported over to their detention centers. Now, undocumented people with no criminal record don't even get the same privileges as a prisoner here. And allow me to remind you, being an undocumented person in the United States is a civil misdemeanor. Our president has 34 felonies and remains in society. But these people with no criminal offenses can't even get bond?
So one of the stories that we will talk about is an allegation that American foreign policy is for sale. And this is one of the most shared clips, narratives in the social media spaces. So, my good people, you know about this claim that the American foreign policy under Donald Trump operates less like a diplomacy and more like a transaction is what we want to talk about. The allegation or the narrative that is going around is that those countries that pay, those countries that flatter or align financially and politically with Trump's inner cycle get favorable treatment, and those that criticize him, they are either punished or ignored. MAGA supporters, of course, they take this positively and say that it's all about America First realism. The opposers, or the Democrats, on the other hand, they say that, it's not good. They believe that it's the commercialization of national interest. So what is striking in this story is not the claim itself, but how often it's echoed by American voters, of course, or American citizens across ideological lines. You can imagine, even some conservatives admit that foreign policy during Trump's era felt unusually personal, centered on loyalty rather than long-standing institutions. Whether you believe the accusations or not, the perception alone matters. Once American citizens believe that foreign policy can be bought, then trust in global leadership collapses. And of course, that damage is not easy to reverse. It's very hard. Our second story is about the Epstein case. At this point, we will be talking about accountability, or is it political shielding? Because, my good people, according to social media, the videos that are there that are being discussed, Democrats believe that this case is hard, and they're accusing Trump allies, that is not the Democrats, they're accusing Trump allies of obstructing accountability in the Epstein case. And in this case, we are not talking about them, denying crimes. It's not about that. It's about they're obstructing in a manner that they are limiting how far investigations are allowed to go. So, of course, this resonates so deeply with many American citizens. Epstein, the late Epstein, the late Epstein himself represents a symbol of elite immunity, right? A man connected to politicians, a man connected to billionaires, a man connected to intelligence agencies, and then finally dies in custody, but the full truth never comes out. So when the Democrats say that accountability is being blocked, what they are really saying is that there is one justice system for the powerful and another one for everyone. Shocking. So, on the other hand, Trump supporters, of course, they react and they argue that Democrats are weaponizing Epstein for political gain while ignoring uncomfortable connections on their own side. And of course, that is where the problem is. The case has become a partisan football instead of a national reckoning. So, for a normal or for an ordinary American watching this story unfold on social media platforms, it's not all about red versus white. It's about no one that is at the top ever truly pays. Now let's talk about our third interesting story about the indefinite immigrant detention. If there is a story that is being talked about always and that scares people in America, especially the immigrants, is the stories surrounding it. Immigrants are the hardest hit currently in America. So there is a new court order going around on social media. Americans are talking about it. And they are saying that immigrant detention can now be indefinite and mandatory without the option of bond that is harsh. So for MAGA supporters, they believe that it's all about restoring their border. It's all about them being able to control and stop illegal entry. Democrats believe that men, that is inhumane, it crosses a constitutional line, which shouldn't be the case. So at this point, the discussion will shift from political to principles now. Indefinite detention without bond raises serious concerns. How long is indefinite, by the way? Who decides? And what protection remains once due process is weakened? For MAGA supporters, they believe this is all about sovereignty, this is all about security, but for Democrats, it's about a dangerous precedent, one where executive power expands while judicial safeguards shrink. So, social media alone doesn't just amplify the outrage of the American people, it also amplifies fear. And fear, historically, is how permanent policies are born. So, what's the bigger picture in our story today? The bigger story is that when you connect these three stories that we just talked about, the foreign policy for sale, stalled elite accountability, and indefinite detention, then you'll start to see why these videos are being talked about. Number one, they all point to the same anxiety. Who is the system really working for? So MAGA supporters see a leader breaking corrupt norms. On the other hand, the critics or the opposers see a system bending to protect power. And in the case of social media platforms, for better, for worse, it has become a place where American citizens come to rant, they come to argue, and these arguments are no longer being filtered by the mainstream media. They are being debated raw and uncut, which is beautiful. So it's not all about Donald Trump. It's about whether Americans still believe the rules apply equally and whether power has limits and also whether democracy is negotiable. Thank you for watching the video up to this point. I appreciate your presence here. I'll see you in the next video.